This is the all-new Musso four-wheel drive ute, and SsangYong reckon this is going to be a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons when it comes to competing with other four-wheel drive utes in Australia. So, let's get some specs out of the way. It's a 2.2 litre turbo diesel, makes 130 kilowatts and 400 newton meters. That runs through a 6-speed auto or manual gearbox, part-time four-wheel drive, shift on the fly, low-range transfer case, all that stuff. It's got an automatic locking rear differential, which does have benefits on-road and off-road. And you might be asking where the rest of the tray is. This is actually a short wheelbase version. It's got a coily rear end, roughly 800 kilo payload, and there will be a longer wheelbase version coming out with leaf springs pretty soon. But is it any good? Is it worth the money that they're asking? Let's take it for a drive and find out. First impressions is that you'll notice that this thing is a lot much easier to look at than older SsangYongs. Some of the executives said that the older designs were a little bit polarizing. Some of them liked them, some of them didn't. It's a nice way of saying that the old ones were pretty ugly, let's be honest. This new one is probably a little bit more normal than the old ones. Probably a bit more homogeneous and easier on the eye overall, definitely. That's not the only big change. I mean, this is a completely reworked model. The interior, very nice, fairly up to date. It's got a lot of nice touch points. I've actually been really impressed with how solid it feels when you try and move bits around. This thing feels like really nicely bolted together. That's always inspiring for a four-wheel drive, I think. Now, there's one important thing to note about how SsangYong have the Musso and the Rexton. Rather than the wagon being based off the ute, they've gone the other way around. This Musso is actually based off the Rexton. And you can kind of tell it's got a bit more space in the rear. Second row is actually pretty spacious for a four-wheel drive ute. The wheelbase on this one is a bit shorter too. You'll notice that small tub. But if you're jonesing for something bigger, higher payload, a long wheelbase with leaf springs will be coming, and that'll give you 1,020 kilos of payload. What else is refined is the engine. This 2.2 litre, yeah, it does lack a little bit of power in comparison to some other utes, but it's very refined. It's nice and quiet. This is similar to Ford's new 2 litre twin turbo in terms of quietness overall and refinement. And this 6-speed, it's the Aizen box. It's used on a lot of other four-wheel drives already. It's a proven unit and it performs quite well. Coil sprung rear end doesn't make the thing perfectly smooth over everything. It's still got a fairly normal jiggly sort of four-wheel drive ride. You can feel that front end is pretty firm, and it's probably lacking in a little bit of bump stop spacing for my own personal liking. You'll find yourself run out of the limits pretty quickly when you hit some big bumps. You'll run out of ground clearance too as one of the first ports of call off-road as a limiter. This thing has about 215 mil according to the spec sheet, but in the real world it feels like a little bit less than that. You ramp over, you do start to hit, there's a cross member just below my feet here somewhere, you definitely start hitting that as one of the first things. There's also a lower control arm mount on that live axle at the rear just before the wheel, and that's one of the first things you hit as well. And this thing definitely lacks a bit of that clearance compared to some other utes, and that's the first thing that will stop you, because traction's actually pretty good. Automatic locking rear diff, low range, four-wheel drive, hill descent control, a little bit of traction control. Where the strength of this Musso is, no doubt, is the value for money proposition. So this thing is 40 grand, drive away. You've got heated, ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, nice leather seats. They've got a bit of bolstering about them. They're pretty comfortable. This thing is actually a pretty nice place to sit and chew up some Ks. Along with drive-away pricing across the range of new SsangYongs, this thing's got a 7-year unlimited K warranty, and that's pretty massive actually. Only Hyundai have it, the other Korean brand, and it beats Ford, Nissan, Holden, Toyota, Volkswagen. All those guys have 3 years, 5 years. Some of them have given you 5 years or 7 years optionally for a little while, but none have done it off the bat straight up. And so you've got to give SsangYong a lot of credit for doing that. They must have a lot of faith in this product being pretty good. If you're looking for something with a heap of power and lots of really good off-road capability, this thing probably isn't right on the money for you. But if you're looking for a lot of value for money and a big warranty, then this thing is definitely worth looking at.